Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, Mal McCallion, and my good friend and co-host, Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you today?
I'm awesome. How are you? You've got a dance festival to come.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I'm going to be rushing off to that later on. But yes, before then, we've got a lot to talk about in the property and AI spheres. So let's crack on with our property news. All right, first up in property news, the big news that Rightmove is being relegated from the FTSE 100. So this was confirmed by, it's called the Russell Group, which is basically monitors valuations of companies in the UK and recommends which are to be promoted from the FTSE 250 and which are to be demoted from the FTSE 100 down to the 250. Rightmove narrowly avoided being relegated 3 months ago by the skin of its teeth. It was because Donald Trump launched the attack on Iran on the 28th of February, that actually sent EasyJet down instead of Rightmove 3 months ago. But this time out, there was to be no reprieve. So Rightmove finds itself in the 250 for the first time, I think, since like 2016. It's like 10 years or so it's been in the FTSE 100. Obviously, one of the most profitable businesses at 70% margin there as well. It has been absolutely battered by various things, including particularly AI, over the course of the last 6 months to 8 months. Also, the 1.5 billion court case. Matt, pretty big news. What's your take?
It's no surprise, is it? We sort of, as you say, they were sort of spared almost Everton style from the drop last time round, but now, in fact, sorry, totally off tangent, but you've lost your manager, haven't you?
We have, yes. Ipswich Town
Speaking of
manager.
spared from the drop, but yeah, I don't think it's a surprise. And I think they're going to struggle to get back into it, right?
It doesn't seem to be moving the needle any of the things that they've been trying to do. So they've tried the share buybacks as well, various other little kind of stops to the city. But yes, the kind of medium to long term outlook for their share price it doesn't look like it's getting back to the dizzy heights that it was. And interestingly, it's now kind of hovering around the 3.1 billion valuation, which is almost exactly half what it was offered about two and a half years ago, when REA Group kind of came in and made an offer, and the board very quickly rejected. I think that they offered like 4 times and quickly rejected each and every one of them and said that they were going to be able to pump the share price even more. So, it's not uniquely a Rightmove thing, although the 1.5 billion court case is. Many other of the large property portals out in the wild have also seen not the same but similar drops of 30 to 40%, so including REA Group itself and I think CoStar and various others. So there has been a repricing of portals as people as investors have looked out and thought, actually, are the prospects for these big businesses as good as they had seemed? And the question is, were they overvalued before, or are they undervalued now? I think that, as you say, they're unlikely to come back anytime soon. And I think that that's really an indication of how AI particularly is going to change the way that people are able to discover property. And, that's obviously, I think, good news for many of the agents that are out there, many of whom listen into this, because I do think that it's going to mean that in the medium term, Rightmove is going to become less of a dominant force. I think in the shorter term, they are going to continue to ramp up their prices, because what they want to try and do is recover some of their share value. I spoke to an agent last week on my tour down in the southwest, who was whose Rightmove rep had floated the idea, and it almost like as a softening up exercise, that they might increase their prices by 23%. And the rep said, "Oh, but don't worry, I'm on your side." It's like, okay, what does that mean?
No.
Probably inevitably we go, it's okay, we've managed to get it at 12%. It's like, that's still 3 times inflation. Anyway,
What's really interesting,
interesting,
sorry, just because you touched on it there, I was on the call with Neil Campbell of Listing Logic this morning, chatting about various bits and pieces, and he was reporting that the REA Group's dropped dramatically again in the last week. And as you touched on, the portals around the world, near perfectly actually, given you said 40%, REA in the last 6 months dropped 41%. And they're down at 147 at the moment. So that'd be cents, wouldn't it, rather than pence. But what they're doing, interestingly, REA, is actually going after the digital marketing spend. So they're really pushing for Facebook and Instagram, which obviously from an agency point of view, that's your first party authority. That's your domain where you are controlling that content. And if you start giving that away to the portals on top of your listings, you're giving away all that social economic data that really lets you be that first party authority on those things. So it's interesting to see they're going after that. I know there's still agencies out there who don't have a website; they have a landing page and then direct people to Rightmove for search. But don't go away. Your data's your fuel. It's your money. Don't let that go.
Yeah, and I think what we'll see more and more, just like REA Group down there, I think Hemnet over in Sweden's got some new products and services that it's trying to fire out as well. Rightmove over here, one of the big kind of big things that they used recently to try and shore up the share price was how big they're growing in mortgages. So, their mortgages have more than doubled, I think, in the last couple of years. It's more than tripled in the last couple of years. And that's basically because, obviously they're now intervening in agents' potential revenues, right? Not only are they costing agents much more money, they're also now actually going after the kind of revenues, the additional revenues that agents could earn. So yeah, I think it speaks to the kind of desperation that I think these portals are finding themselves in the situation of, and I think it's going to continue. But yeah, more and more, I think agents are going to particularly have to look at how much they pay for what portals. And yeah, I think that it's probably going to be a very different world, I would suggest, in the next year to 18 months in terms of what you can do on a portal for sure. All right, next up in our property news, we've got the Bruce brothers are back at Purplebricks. So this has been formally confirmed after the kind of, I think, the sort of all the gossip that came up a few months ago about whether they were going to come back or not, rumours in March. But yes, they are now firmly back and ensconced in the bricks. Michael Bruce saying, "My brother and I are delighted to return home to the business we founded and are excited to work with Sir Charles Dunstan and the Purplebricks team to drive success and build market share in the UK housing market." So just to recap, they spent £197 million trying to build a business, got all that money from investors, and then in the end the business was sold for £1 to Sir Charles Dunstan and Strike, which then rebranded as Purplebricks. Obviously there is some plan here. I think it's going to be interesting to kind of see what takes shape. Matt, have you got any ideas on how this is going to be different to the last time?
Well, I think it's not a shock at all, right? First and foremost, I do wonder what's going to happen with the agency UK, given sort of the positions in there, albeit as a non-executive director. Like, will there be a coming together and a relaunch of that business on that front? And obviously, as you've highlighted a number of times before, what's going to happen with that tech that came out of Bumming that sort of caused some question marks about how it all worked, and is that going to rear its head again as part of this process?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I would suggest that they would absolutely be using all these kind of tools that they've kind of built up over time. I imagine that the core argument is going to be the same, or the core pitch is going to be the same, which is, estate agents are ripping you off. I would be astonished if they didn't revisit Commisery at some stage as well. It is, something of a, I don't know, do you call it a shame? So obviously a lot of Booming was predicated around essentially the Bruce brothers saying, "We're really sorry, we didn't really mean it," with Purplebricks. And now it remains to be seen whether that apology is actually true or not, and whether people were right to kind of shun Booming in the end, or agents were right to shun Booming in the end, because yeah, it turned out that actually it wasn't necessarily something that they were really committed to, and they are going to go back after estate agents again. But yes, it's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out, because Purplebricks in its current guise under Strike, under Sir Charles Dunstan, has tried a number of different business models. It's gone free. It's kind of gone very, 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 very cheap. It's gone a little bit more expensive. So it's obviously been flailing around a little bit. I do see the odd Purplebricks sign up and about around as I drive around, but yes, I don't see sold ones. I only see ones they've got Own It, which is their kind of for sale board. It says Own It. Yes, so it's obviously in a bit of a depressed state right now, but yeah, it's going to be interesting, I think, to see where they target, because I don't think they can go fully national unless Charles Dunstan is willing to absolutely put virtually all of his fortune into it. And yeah, how hard they go, what the marketing message is going to be, if it's not going to be anti-estate agents. One of the interesting things actually about Charles Dunstan is he is on record as saying that he wants to destroy estate agents. So that's nice then. Yes. So off he goes. All right. So that's our second news in property. Third one is about referral fees. So this is there was a report about a week or two ago, actually, that that legitimate reasons for people using referral fees. So to recap, the BBC, I think it was, did a big scandal about Connells particularly, and the tie-ins from mortgages and conveyancing, and the fact that referral fees were paid by the suppliers to the agency for the referrals, and it was made out this was absolutely a complete and utter scam and scandal and all that sort of stuff. But actually, the kind of tribunal came back later and said, in the last few weeks, and said, no, actually, that's fine. Consumers are kind of, they get it. They understand that that's probably what's going to be happening. So yeah, as long as it's clear and it's there and people know about it, then it's fine. And then this week there was a lot of talk about basically how conveyancers really should use their estate agents as referrals, because essentially consumers don't tend to argue with whatever those referrals are. So I think it was 1 in 4 buyers use, so let me get the exact figure. I think 25% discover their conveyance following a recommendation from friends or family. And they said that this is Lions Bow solicitors. Nearly a third of buyers choose a conveyancer recommended by their estate agents. Okay, so between those two, obviously over 50%, but a third is pretty punchy. So that really kind of plays into obviously the role of agents in that recommendation moment. Matt, this is something that kind of has been kicked around for a little while in terms of how astonishingly bad it was, or how it's entirely fair. What's your take?
It feels like it's been around for decades, doesn't it? I don't know specifically when I stepped out of the green and yellow of Foxtons and started talking to more agencies, and like, was it Countrywide when it floated, 50p in the pound was made through referral fees. I think the key part that's brought out as part of this CLC, the Council for Licensed Conveyancers report, was the transparency. I know mortgage brokers are certainly a lot better. I remortgaged recently and it was in the documentation and everything else, but there's been the fear, but there's obviously a lot of money goes in all the different directions to make sure that you'd hope the service levels were factored in there. But also, if you're buying your house once every 7 years, you may not know who to trust and who to work with. And obviously, if someone's getting some referral fees, then they've got a lot of weight within the relationship, and they can make sure that, hopefully, again, the clients are getting the service that they would expect as a continuation. Because if you've referred someone, you're the one that gets the kick in as much as the person not doing the job.
Yeah, exactly right. And as a potential buyer or whatever, all you want is for it to go through.
Yeah.
You kind of made the emotional decision. Now it's just like, that's going to cost me an extra 150 quid. Don't really care. Just let's get it done. So yeah, I think it's what I think it does is just hopefully for now clears it up, because it keeps kind of coming back, as you say, sort of as an issue. But yes, hopefully it just kind of puts it to bed for now. And yeah, it just speaks to the fact that agents are very central to the kind of lives of conveyancers. And one would hope that as a result of that actually they might speed things up. We shall see. All right, that is our property news this week. Let's dive into our AI and tech news. Well, it's here, isn't it, Matt?
Are you going to get the name right?
Claude, I'm going to say Mythos because we've been talking about Mythos for ages, including the Greek beer. So Claude Mythos models are here. So Claude Mythos 5, and it's slightly pared back and safe version, which is called Claude Fable 5. So really exciting news, dropped yesterday. And yes, I've managed to kind of play around with it a little bit more in Claude design. So it wasn't kind of, I didn't really experience its kind of true power, but the benchmarks, which are intended to give us mortals a guide as to how clever all this AI is, have jumped significantly with the launch of Fable. So yeah, Matt, what's your take? How excited are you?
And for those that didn't see my post, I got Fable 5, Fable 5, Fable 5, didn't respond. And then suddenly Fable 5, Fable 5, Fable 5 from Mel earlier this week when this launched. And I think before we get into the details of just how powerful it is, there are some question marks in terms of Mythos has been released. It's gone through Project Glasswing, which, to recap, is a small subset of the world. So 40, 50 companies, including the American government, to look at it, test it, look for all those 0-day vulnerabilities that Anthropic are scared about, asking that question of, was it a marketing campaign to scare the bejesus out of us all, and then sort of doing it. But now what we've got is a really pared back, clipped version, which is Fable 5. And it's to the extent that if you try to do the two things that Anthropic were worried about, which is around biology, so you can't create biological weapons, and cyber security, you'll get a no and get kicked over to 4.8. Opus 4.8. There's that, well, who's making that decision that these 50 companies in Glasswing can kick on with Mythos 5 and the rest of us mere mortals are left with Fable 5? And that's the first time this has happened, right? Certainly in terms of public. Well, Model Labs have always, we think, have got a conveyor belt of new, well-trained models ready to go, but now they're publicly doing it. I think the other part, I got the WhatsApp from you, I got home, I opened up Claude and there was this beautiful splash screen, which I think I sent you with butterflies.
Yeah, it's lovely.
You referred to it as something that was quite old fashioned. I can't remember what it was. It was a talk song, wasn't it?
For those old enough to remember, they're very similar to the cover of the LP from Talk, Colour of Spring, with little butterflies on it. But anyway, as for the old people, nostalgia.
Did Talk do pictures of you as well? That's a different.
No, they did. Life's What You Make It.
There you go. But so the announcement, the splash screen as you got started announcing Fable 5 was here. We're saying it's here until the 22nd of June. So use it as part of your subscription, crack on, fill your boots, enjoy yourself. But from the 22nd of June, it won't be. And I didn't capture the screenshot properly, but something's happening on the 22nd of June. I expect it'll be a pay-as-you-go model, and we'll have to start paying for the token. So it really is giving us that taster, and then trying to wean you off it afterwards. Like the lad in Train Spotting, and it's just
exactly the drug dealer strategy, right?
Exactly. But to ignore all of that stuff, it's great. I think when we've had the recent releases, and it's like 4.6 and 4.7, 4.8, and maybe even similar on the ChatGPT front, if you're not using Codex as the harness, it's like, well, can you really tell the difference? And I listened to some things after you'd messaged me, and it's people saying it's almost too clever, and people who are writing, say, product designs, it was coming back as that really intelligent person at a party who knows they're intelligent and sets out to make you all really confused. It was generating documents that Opus would have generated, which just made sense and was exactly what you wanted. Using the same prompts was coming back with just too much detail.
Right.
And not the intelligent person who is just trying to help you understand it. It's just like, here's a load of stuff you won't even understand. Whereas my experience of it, I've had a couple of specific ones. I wrote the post the other day using it, and it was rapid, and it came back and it was succinct. I didn't have any of that really intelligent stuff. The one that really caught me just last night, actually, I had an amazing tour around Berkshire visiting all the prospect offices, and I got home and I've got a CRM sent me their new API to review, and I've got a client who wants to integrate with it. So I was like, well, can you build me real simple prompt? Can you build me a spreadsheet with all of the API endpoints, every field that's in there, and a sort of a Moscow rating, which means must, should, could, would, as to whether we should use those fields as part of the integration. And not only, I gave it very scant detail. I think I alluded to who the supplier was. And when I came back, it actually researched who the supplier was, researched what their product lines were, researched the API, pulled all of that back, and then done a must based on what product lines we should be addressed first. So it wasn't just normally what would happen is it'd go off, scrape it, pull back just the literal rows of information. This had done research on top of research on top of research, which I probably would have got to after maybe the second or third meeting, but it was just all there in a spreadsheet. It was like, well, my work here is done.
Yeah. And this is the crazy thing. And obviously, as part of the tour that I'm doing right now, we go deep into, actually play around with some open clause. So actually AI agents and things like that. And they're all underpinned by Claude at the moment. And I haven't shifted them onto Fathom. We've been talking about this earlier. Fable 5, not Fathom 5. And it's almost, it's so clever. Even if they stopped at Opus 4.8 or even probably just Opus 4, there's so much in there now that is so good that actually it's going to change everything anyway. So the fact that it just keeps getting better and better and better, and you talk about the kind of coding benchmarks, Opus 4.8 was at something like 60% this one's at 80% or something, that's Sweetbench it's insane. This is getting very, very, very very smart, very intelligent.
It is however spendy, isn't it? It's more
twice as expensive. Twice as expensive as Opus.
And also that volume of reasoning that it's doing means that it's running through those tokens, is absolutely blitzing through those tokens, which means it's twice as spendy, but also you're using a shed load more tokens. But the question is, as that one that I just sort of talked about, that use case, how many hours would I have spent like just going, actually, I've reviewed this, now can you do this? The fact that it went off to that depth of reasoning, I think I'd be quite happy to spend those tokens if it just means that I end up with a better version of what I probably would have done myself, rather than iterating through and wasting my time, spending my time doing it.
Yeah, and I think what's going to be the next thing, and this is certainly something we're looking at right now within our business, is which type of model do you deploy for which tasks? So if it's a really basic kind of, just sort of sorting task, then you can use one of the real cheap kind of almost, some of the open source models. But if you want something really, really kind of, as you said, the sort of the strategic stuff or the real kind of deep dive, then you'll go to one of these more expensive models. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to be using these harnesses, whether that's OpenClaw, whether that's one of the others, to actually kind of have differently intelligent AI agents or AIs, where actually you call on them to do different stuff, and you'll actually kind of ping them, through Telegram or through whatever messaging app you're using to converse with them. And I think that's going to be almost the next skill, is actually making sure that you deploy the right level of intelligence for the task that you are looking to get done. Because it may be that actually you didn't need to do all that in that research, and you would maybe not have got to everything because you didn't think it was going to add enough value. And I think that's going to be the kind of the one of the key differentiators as we kind of move through the rest of this year into next. Yeah. All right. That is the big news of Claude Fable is launch and the arrival of Mythos. We also had the re-arrival of Apple Intelligence this week. So as we spoke about briefly last week, Apple had their worldwide developer conference this week. And yes, one of the big announcements was that Siri AI is coming back again. It was all a little bit familiar, wasn't it? It was all a little bit like, and it's actually not coming until like the end of the year for a start, and then just only on certain phones for a start, and certain MacBooks and certain other things, and it kind of they messed this up 3 years ago, and with Apple Intelligence that kind of never arrived. I was quite bullish about the fact that they couldn't mess it up again. Their share price dropped about 2% on the announcement.
Is that you just pulling your shares?
It's me just throwing my MacBooks away. But yeah, so it's what's your take, Matt?
Underwhelming. I think underwhelming has to be the key, right? And I think you've hit the nail on the head. They've had these $500 million lawsuits where they have to pay out because Apple Intelligence needed you to buy the new iPhone and then never delivered. And now there's certain features that will only work if you've got Apple Intelligence on them. So, you've got the latest iPhone 17 or 8, whatever it's up to. So it's a dangerous thing. I think there are elements of it. There was a sort of spatial maps view that really sort of stood out if you're new to an area and you want to get a good feel for it before you sort of venture out into the streets. There's the visual intelligence where you could take a photo of a sort of quite a complex calendar appointment or a picture, and it would pull out the calendar. So, for example, a concert ticket, and it would pull out the date and time and venue and that sort of thing. So I guess doing what Apple does do well, which is thinking about the situations where you'd need to use those AIs within the hardware. And I think that's where it crossed over. And I keep getting the term wrong, but there's the one where within the camera function, you could take a photo of me and Mal as we are now and then change the perspective from within it. So you're regenerating your AI on the fly. And then it's starting to cross that line between hardware and software. And like a lot of people will say, so for example, you could say, take a photo and then say, pop Mal in Euro Disney or whatever it is, and generate all those different ones from different perspectives and everything else. But it's like, well, did Mal actually go there? And I just want the camera to take the camera pictures. I don't want it to be using AI. But that's sort of losing the point to an extent, because these things are all, you can choose to use them. You don't have to do it. It's a bit like changing your photos black and white. You don't have to do that. It's just an option that's available in that camera, right?
Yeah. So I think, like you say, there was kind of like small things that sounded pretty cool. Again, they're not ready yet. They're kind of coming down the track, and it's a bit kind of like, well, okay, tell us when it's there and we can kind of get involved. But yes, it felt like a real moment of opportunity that just kind of went away again. And it's kind of crazy to think that that they may have, again, oversold what was coming, and then delivery time, it's kind of like, oh yeah, but actually it's kind of a little bit the same as before. That being said, the fact that AI is going to be available in Siri, assuming that it is good AI, that it's based on the Gemini model, so they've kind of distilled that out into Siri AI, it's going to bring AI intelligence to the masses, right? There's 2.4 billion or whatever iPhones there are out there. It's that's a lot of people who are part of the ecosystem right now. They may not all obviously have the iPhone 17 or whatever you need, but certainly in the next upgrade or the upgrade after that, then they'll probably have access to this kind of stuff. So I do think it has the potential. Let's leave it as potential to be huge, but it remains to be seen about delivery. We will obviously have a few words to say on it when it does finally arrive. All right, next up, we are going into the world of OpenAI, makers of ChatGPT. They have filed a confidential submission to the Securities and Exchange Commission over in the States to basically go public, so to IPO. Really interesting one, particularly coming hard on the heels of SpaceX, which is supposed to go in the next few days, which has obviously XAI inside it. That's Elon Musk's one. And also Anthropic has filed last week for the same thing. Matt, who's going to win the race? Who's going to get there first?
Well, their one was saying to OpenAI, that is, they're saying we're not planning on doing it anytime soon, but we're just doing this so that we're ready. And it's a case of, is that right? And then I think what's going to start happening a bit on the follow-on from Fable 5, and I'm pleased I thought that through because I was going to say full Fathom 5, but I expect they'll probably bring ChatGPT 6 out in the matter of days, and they've had it waiting, and now it's like bang. And I think there's been some tweets to that effect. It's like, we're pretty comfortable with where we're at. But it's going to be, are they all doing this as positioning for their IPO? And like, what are they releasing something because it's ready to be released? Or is it part of a strategy to see who goes first? I think SpaceX obviously key one, and then I wouldn't be surprised chaos theory, like if the other two just all arrive at the same time.
No, it's so funny. It's almost like no, don't look over here. It's fine. Don't look at us. It's like a whole kind of sort of poker playing. I haven't got good hands, no. And then suddenly, what OpenAI is hoping, I imagine, is that Anthropic will go, oh right, fine. Actually, let's just chill because they're not going to do it, and so they can get in first.
And surprise!
Because it is yeah, ta-da! Because there is only a finite amount of money out there. There's a lot, but it's finite. And SpaceX is scooping up, is going to scoop up a bit of it. Obviously, they're first out of the blocks, and there's a lot ready to go. But that's more for the kind of spacey bit than it is for the AI bit necessarily. I think it's tomorrow. I think is it today or tomorrow? We're recording this on June the 11th, so I think it might be going on the 12th. You may be right, but yes. So it's not as pure an AI play as Anthropic versus OpenAI will be. So it is the case that whoever gets there first is likely to cream off most of the cash that is freely available. So yeah, I think that Anthropic's kind of in the lead. It's kind of filed all of its stuff. And I imagine they're going to go as soon as they possibly can, because the last thing they want is for OpenAI to kind of sneak in and just get ahead of them. Are you finding that date? Is that what you're doing? Right
it says today and tomorrow, but it looks like the Motley Fool is saying tomorrow now.
Okay. All right. So we will obviously let you know just how many trillions Elon has made from the SpaceX float. On
Elon, I was quite excited this week to see him actually announce how these data center in space are going to look when he filed his initial designs for it.
Yeah. Go on. Describe. Tell us. Build a word picture.
I'll just wave my hands around so that those who do actually watch, thanks Dad, can see what I'm talking about. But I think in taking a step back, it sounds insane, this idea of putting data centers in space, but it sounded as insane when he talked about putting broadband in space, right? And now I did the pod before last using Starlink. And so those things are rattling around out there, beaming broadband that's better than I'm getting here in central London.
Yeah,
and
things like making electric cars cool. Everyone was like, "That's never going to happen," and Tesla is a testament to that as well. Sorry, Karen.
No. And he's got his plans to put 1 million AI satellites in space. So the data centers, and we're hearing other ideas about every new build will have a data center on it, and various Airbnbs will have them, and that sort of thing. But it's achievable, and his designs are quite, when it comes to infrastructure and hardware, unfortunately the guy is pretty decent at it, and the designs make sense. It's not that absurd to think who's done it before, they just repeat that trick again. And so it's got things like obviously there's no way of dispelling heat out there because there's no atmosphere, so it's like the design is done so there's very, very, very minimal edge, so that it's got sort of getting all its electricity and energy from the sun, but also not getting heated up by it. So it's well thought through. He's obviously got some clever people on it, and I won't bet against him on this.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, that's going to be some really interesting. I saw another article again going deep geek about China, and they've actually got some underwater wave powered and wind powered data centers now. And because again, underwater, obviously there's a natural cooling. Water is one of the most scarce resources for all these data centers as well. So they've got that technology, which actually apparently, this is again so geeky, was developed in Scotland originally, but we haven't developed any of that sort of stuff going on. It's now, yes, China is running away with that as well. So, yes, data centers, one of the big kind of bottlenecks for a mass adoption of AI, or certainly AI as much as we all want, and certainly to keep it within cost effective ways. That there's a lot of attention, a lot of work going into that. Digressing. Next up, we wanted to go back to OpenAI because they and the Trump administration have apparently been having secret talks over the last year or so about possibly the American government taking a stake in OpenAI. Now that's kind of, it's really weird because obviously, the US Republicans are very much sort of like to the right, some might call them far right, and what they are focused, historically on is very kind of almost conservative with a small c, not this socialist kind of ownership of, collective ownership of private companies and stuff. So it just seems really weird that they're kind of talking about doing this. And if they're talking about doing it with OpenAI, are they going to make sure that they do it with Anthropic as well? I mean, where does it go? Well,
what about SpaceX as its IPOing as well? You're right. It's very much sounds like something that Bernie Sanders has been banging on about over there. Yeah. It comes back to your thing about Scotland though, and the cooling. Like quite a lot of the really advanced AI started in the UK, and then we've not held on to it. And when they move on, they're moving offshore, and we've seen this with entrepreneurs and businesses before, haven't we? Like they head off to the US because they're getting set up better over there. But the fact that it just feels like Trump trying to grab hold of some of these and forming a public wealth fund to sort of use it as an investment. We saw. Norway did really well. Yeah. And obviously Qatar have done really well with those sort of opportunities with oil. And it's now a case of, well, let's do the same with AI, because we know the American economy would be tanking if it wasn't for those companies really dragging it through.
Yeah, it's a huge part of the uplift in the GDP, particularly over the last couple of years. So yes, and getting a stake in it kind of potentially makes sense, but it just seems very strange coming from the governing party that puts quite a lot of store in private enterprise rather than public ownership. Brilliant. Well, that is our AI and tech news this week. Let us talk now about our tool of the week. All right, Matt, this is one of yours, which is Gemini 3.5 Live Translate. So have you had a play around with this?
I've not, because I can obviously understand all those languages myself anyway. But I dropped it in just because it's been released. We've talked about, I've currently got my AirPod in my ear, and we've had, you had to, with Apple, you had to have a certain set of AirPods and certain phones to be able to do their live translate. With Gemini did come into the Google Meet and to be able to turn that on. And I know my developers use it often to understand my Grundvarian tones. But now
I've been deploying it for years.
Exactly. And now it's available in Gemini 3.5 on your phone. So you can actually use that when you go on holiday. And it seemed fitting timing with the summer upon us. You'll be able to use it in Albania at your dance festival.
I will be. Yeah, excellent. One of the use cases I keep thinking about for this is if you've got your AirPods in or whatever, on my way, before I go off on holiday, I'm going to get my hair cut at my Turkish barbers down the road. And they're always chit-chatting to each other. And I just wonder, anybody listening out there who's going to get their hair cut at Turkish barbers, I'm just, pop some of these in and just kind of actually, you can then hear them talking about, I don't know, how rubbish your hair is or whatever. But yes.
They definitely do that to me.
Yes, you may not find yourself there anytime soon. All right. That is all of our news for this week. Thank you very much indeed for listening in. We'll be back again next week with even more property and AI news. So until then, have yourselves great weeks, great weekends, and we'll catch up again in 7 days.
Take care, everyone.